This happened last summer. For the past year and a half, I'd been living full-time out of my camper van. Solitude had become my comfort zone. As long as I had internet, anywhere could be my workspace. I loved the quiet, the stillness, the escape from people. Sometimes I camped beside lakes, other times along mountain passes. But the place I found that day was the most isolated spot I'd ever driven into. The forest road on the map slowly turned into a narrow dirt track, and before long, I lost all cell phone signal that I hesitated. But the weather was clear and I still had plenty of daylight, so I pushed deeper into the woods. After nearly 2 hours, the trail opened into a perfect clearing, flat ground, surrounded by tall pines, and absolutely silent except for the birds. It was exactly the kind of isolation I usually loved, but something about it felt a little too quiet that I parked, set up a small table outside, cooked dinner, and watched the sunset with a cup of coffee. Being so far from everything felt strangely relieving, like the world couldn't touch me there. When darkness fell, I went inside, read a few pages, wrote a bit, then finally lay down to sleep. The van's interior was silent except for the faint wind outside. Then, close to midnight, a knock. A sharp, quick knock-knock on the door. I sat straight up in an instant. Right near the trees. They paused, then faded. I barely breathed until sunrise. As soon as light appeared, I grabbed my backpack and left the forest entirely. I didn't even bother to gather my tent. All I could think the whole way back was, if he had found me that night, what would he have done? At first, I thought I imagined it. But no, someone was outside. Someone was knocking on a van in the middle of a remote forest where no one else should be. I didn't turn on any lights. I just stared at the door, waiting. No second knock came, but I could feel it. Someone was standing out there. With my flashlight in hand, I slowly cracked the door open. A man stood right outside. Late 40s maybe, sunburned skin, scruffy beard, clothes worn and dirty, mud-caked shoes, dusty jacket. "Hey man," he said calmly. "I'm camping down the trail. Got any food you can spare?" His words sounded harmless, but his tone didn't match. Too flat, too emotionless. And his eyes weren't on me. They were scanning the inside of my van like he was memorizing it. Even so, I handed him some leftover food. He walked away without thanking me. But he didn't leave. Before the trees swallowed him, he paused. His back was turned, but he tilted his head slightly, like he was watching me from the corner of his eye. That I wasn't sure, but it unsettled me. I shut the door and locked every latch, including the bolt. I turned off all lights and kept watch from the window. Nothing, at first. About 30 minutes later, my eyes had fully adjusted to the dark. I scanned the clearing again and froze. He was still there, standing between the pines near the back of my van, perfectly still, staring directly at my window. He'd look away for a moment, then turn his head back toward me, over and over, like he wanted me to know he was watching. I held my breath. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I wanted to flee, but was too afraid to drive out through the forest in the dark. So I waited. All night. He circled the van slowly, stepping in and out of the trees, occasionally stopping just to look at me. By morning, I was exhausted. When the light finally spilled inside, I stepped out. He was gone. But footprints were everywhere, around the tires, close to the doors, by the trees. He'd been walking around the van repeatedly, and there was no sign of a campsite. No tent, no fire pit, nothing. Maybe he'd lied. Or maybe I had unknowingly parked in his place. This happened in October 2025. I needed a break from work, so I planned a solo hike to an abandoned forest research center I'd heard about through old blogs. It wasn't on any official maps anymore, but supposedly the building was still standing. I parked my car off a muddy dirt road, grabbed my backpack, stove, sleeping gear, a day's worth of food, and started hiking. My goal was to reach the building by late afternoon. The first hours were peaceful, falling leaves, cool wind, birds chirping. But the further I went, the muddier the ground became, and thorny bushes scraped my arms as I pushed through. Eventually, after about 2.5 hours, I saw a single-story concrete structure covered with moss, broken barred windows, cracked walls, but it was still intact. Inside, the air smelled like damp dust. Old cabinets, scattered papers, and debris lay everywhere. I cleared a spot and rolled out my sleeping beauty as the sun began to set. I sat on the front steps and watched the sky turn orange over the thick forest. It felt isolated, but beautiful. When it got dark, I blocked the inside of the door with a heavy table. There was no lock. I turned off my flashlight and tried to sleep. Eventually, I drifted off until footsteps woke me, crunching gravel. Slow, deliberate. Someone was walking right outside. I moved toward the window but saw only darkness. Then came more steps. Closer, unhurried. Definitely human. My heart thudded. My hands were shaking so much I didn't dare turn on my flashlight. Silence. Then, the doorknob turned. Once, then again. Someone was trying to come in, and the table was the only thing stopping them. I shouted, "Who's there?" But got no answer. Then something slid under the door. A thin stick or wire, pushing inward, probing around before slowly retracting. That was enough. I grabbed my backpack, turned off my light, waited a few tense minutes, then moved the table aside and cracked the door open with my flashlight ready. But to the side of the building, something hung from a branch, a black bag tied, with rope, swaying slightly. I approached. Inside were old photographs, faded, unsettling. The top one made my stomach twist. A picture of me, walking through the forest earlier that same day, wearing the exact clothes I had on. I snapped the bag shut, grabbed my gear, and left without looking back. My GPS guided me through the dark. By the time I reached my car, the sky was still black. I started the engine, reversed, and in the rearview mirror, a silhouette at the tree line, perfectly still. Watching. I hit the gas and never returned. To this day, I wonder who took that photo, and how long they had been following me. For months, I'd wanted to take a solo hike to clear my head. I chose a remote trail in northeastern Wyoming that I'd found mentioned on a few old forums. Rarely used, supposedly safe. I parked at the trailhead, no cars, no signal, and started walking. The first hours were peaceful. Halfway to my planned campsite, I stopped under a large tree to rest. As I ate an energy bar, I suddenly felt movement. Across from me, between the trees, a man stood watching, motionless, silent. His dark green jacket and beanie blended with the shadows. I had no idea how long he'd been standing there. He slowly raised his hand and waved. No smile, no expression, just a stiff, robotic gesture. My stomach tightened. I got up calmly, picked up my bag, and walked away without saying a word. For nearly 2 hours, I felt his eyes on me. When I reached the first campsite, I prepared a meal, trying to relax. But then, footsteps. Again. I turned, already knowing. It was him. He sat beside me as if we were friends. His eyes were empty, his smile strange and frozen. "Where are you heading? Staying here tonight? You carrying a weapon?" His tone was soft, but the questions weren't. Then he pulled out a half-opened can of food. "You should eat this," he said. "What you're eating doesn't look filling." The smell from the can made my throat tighten. I refused politely and packed up. "I need to meet a friend." He nodded, but the lifeless smile stayed on his face. I walked back to the trail. Fast. I didn't look back. By the time I reached the next campsite, it was dark. I hit off trail, set up my tent but didn't zip it fully, keeping my shoes on and my backpack close. Sometime in the night, footsteps again. A slow searching, right near the trees. They paused, then faded. I barely breathed until sunrise. As soon as light appeared, I grabbed my backpack and left the forest entirely. I didn't even bother to gather my tent. All I could think the whole way back was, if he had found me that night, what would he have done?